This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Detroit is the greatest!
Straight up light you on fire for a Coney dog right now.
Darren McCarty comes back with Neiman in front of him. McCarty draws. McCarty in. McCarty scores! A magnificent goal! Darren McCarty!
Stafford takes, throws, end zone, Calvin, touchdown, Detroit Lions!
What's up, Detroit? And every other city that listens to us. It's the Motor City Sports Rant on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I am your host, Jason Jarvie. Follow me on Twitter at Jarvie the King. With me, as always, running the board, writing down in his little pad of paper, John the Doc Macaroon. What up?
Jason, my goodness, man. It's that time, my neighbors are lighting off fireworks at all hours of the day.
Sucks.
Yeah, and so for me, I guess you could kind of tell I'm more of a homebody. But lately, I've been getting the itch. Can you tell? I just want to go home, watch sports, tweet all day, think of creative ways to promote the podcast. But last week, for some reason, I was just trolling through Twitter, scrolling, all of a sudden I came across this Michigan fireworks page. And all it does is gives you basic information as to where the fireworks are going to take place. And it happened to be that same night that the Mount Clemens fireworks were going on. So I go to the wife. I'm like, look, you want to take the girls? You just want to get out of the house and go check out the fireworks? And we obviously knew. I'm like, I haven't really ever been to downtown Mount Clemens just to walk around. Obviously serving jury duty. You go to a local bar here and there. But to kind of just walk around downtown Mount Clemens, I had never done it. So she had a little bit of reservations, but we said, listen, let's just go do it. Let's just go try to get as close to the waterfront as possible and have a good time. So we go down there and we kind of get through the people, and there was a lot of people there. So we enjoyed it, though. It actually, for the first time, because we didn't include nobody else. Usually when you invite people, they have their say, let's go here, let's park here, let's get here this time, or let's wait for this person. And it's just like, come on, it takes the fun out of it. So we just went, we parked right across the street from the courthouse, and technically we went the far way because you could have gotten to the waterfront by just making a quick right down the street. But we went the long way. We went around the courthouse. So we got to a spot where we could comfortably watch the fireworks, and they were awesome. And we were, it was like great. We got down by the waterfront. All the people were pretty cool. It was a very comfortable vibe. But both my wife and I kind of, when we were walking, when it was done, kind of had this sense of relief. And I want to get a sense about you, about maybe going to crowds or going to fireworks, where we were kind of nervous being in a crowded place. And I guess you could say that the reason is with all the news, with all the things that are going on, in terms of mass shootings or people blowing each other up. My wife was like looking around, and I kind of noticed, I'm like, you don't seem too comfortable. And she was just really nervous because we were kind of in a situation where there were people really arm to arm, and it was really crowded. And we both kind of, when we walked out, we walked a little bit early before the ending of the fireworks. And we both walked out, and she was almost a little bit in tears saying, you know what, I was really nervous being in a crowd. And I said, you know what, I got that sense too. And I said to myself, wow, it really is affecting us in that day-to-day life. You now have to think about it. And at least for my wife and I, being in a crowded place out in the open, of course, the weed smell didn't help anything, when you got young kids around. But I was telling her, I'm like, man, you can't go anywhere in public without getting the secondhand weed smoke. And it was strong out there in Mount Clemens. But more importantly, and more to the effect of what affected our night was, we were anxious being in a social setting and crowded at the Mount Clemens fireworks. I just want to get a sense for you is, have you been in crowded places, and do you even pay attention like nowadays with the world that we live in? Because my wife and I both were significantly affected.
It's just it's a sign of the times. It's really, in this day and age, it's something you have to think about, unfortunately. And you shouldn't live your life just thinking that something bad is going to happen. But when you are in those heavily crowded areas, it's got to run through your mind, because if you're not, then you won't be prepared at all. And you at least have to be ready for all scenarios. And I know whenever me and my wife are out in, just at a Tigers game or a Lions game, and you're walking through the crowd, I'm always conscious of where my wife is, because even if it's just getting lost, it's a minor inconvenience. But It's a tough road to balance, and I think it's also something that as you get older, it's something that you're more conscious of. When we were 23, 24, 25, we were young and in love. You didn't really worry about that as much, but now, especially now, as new parents, you can't just worry about it's not all about you. You have to think about your kids, and if something did happen, even looking at driving, both of us are definitely safer drivers now, because even without the kid in the car, because if something were to happen to us, that impacts that child. So I think you shouldn't be afraid to live your life, because especially with the whole terror attacks, that if you just stay at home and you refuse to go out, then you're letting them win. So
exactly. And so I was telling my wife exactly the same kind of point. I'm like, look, the way we're going to live our lives is you can't have faith and worry at the same time, philosophically. So we put our faith that all good things are going to happen. But I can tell you, on July 19th, I'm excited to go to the soccer match at Comerica Park. But the thought is in my mind, like, okay, you're going to have these 2 European clubs. You're going to have a lot of people. I went to the event at Michigan Stadium, at the Big House, a couple of years back with Manchester United, in this tournament. But going to it ahead of time, and the thought is in my mind, like, okay, I want to get there early. I think one of the good things for me is I get to events early. So there's not too many crowds. I just kind of walk in when the ticket gates open. So I feel a sense of comfort. And then, generally speaking, we don't leave right away when the masses start to leave. So I think that, I'm really comfortable with the exits at Comerica Park, where we could get out to the parking lot pretty quickly. But at the same time, you also realize that when I went to the baseball game with my nephew, we were just standing there out in the open, and anything could have happened, because you're just standing there in line waiting at the ticket gate. I wanted to get in a little bit earlier than the 5:30 entry time because it started raining, but we got there at like 5:05. We just chit-chatted a little bit, but then you get a sense like, look, there were like 400 people just standing right there at a gate, and there was nothing around. I mean, there was a little bit of security, but at the same time, you just have to kind of succumb to the fact that if something crazy like that's going to happen, the only thing you can do is just find out an exit strategy and get the hell out of there as soon as possible and hope that you're not right at the epicenter. But if I told you that I was going to the soccer event free and clear and with a great peace of mind, I'd be lying. I'm a little bit concerned because of the fact that this crazy world that we're living in.
Yeah,
and plus, many people now more and more are talking about it. They're saying like, look, why hasn't it happened in the States? It's happening right now, primarily in Europe. And people are saying, look, I mean, it's not going to be if, it's going to be when something nasty happens here in the States. And I always now think about, like, are they plotting against the Super Bowl? Are they plotting against the World Series? I always think that maybe they'd go on a grander scale. But from the events that have happened in the past, I'm starting to think that they may just do something silly, like just at a regular, Milwaukee Brewers game. You
can only control, though, what's around you. You can't control what's going on around the world. And it's awful. It's what's been happening. London seems to have been there.
Europe has been the epicenter, yeah.
They've been getting hit so hard recently. And if it's going to happen, there's nothing that we can really do to stop it.
No doubt about it. That's the part that sucks, is that, I'm really looking forward to the event. I'm a big soccer guy. I'm looking forward to watching a soccer match at Comerica Park. But I feel like the enjoyment, the fun going into it is going to be much more palpable and realistic to me than the fear, but it is there. That's what I do want to acknowledge. But are you a fireworks guy? Do you take your wife down? Because yesterday, the Detroit fireworks happened, and I always get excited to watch that. I love the music, but I really like, for me, I love to see fireworks with the song, Proud to be an American. I love that. Oh, come on. Don't tell me you're not into that.
I'm so proud to be an American. Come on. It's the most cliche song.
Jason, it doesn't spur you to feel a sense of joy and love and respect for your country?
No, it doesn't. It's a dumb song. Stop playing it.
Are you serious right now?
Just give me the Star Spangled Banner.
No.
I love Star Spangled Banner. Give me the Battle Hymn of the Republic. It's delightful.
No way, Jason. I cannot believe you're sitting here uttering that you're not a fan of Lee Greenwood.
I'm proud to be an American. Where at least I know I'm free. I'm born to die. The man who died. Get their life for me.
Come on, Jason. Are you serious right now? You don't get moved by this? Like to stand up, want to fight for your country?
This is a dumb song.
Come on.
This is essentially. Have you ever seen America? Or was it? The South Park. Damn it! Why can't I think of the movie? It was the movie with the puppets. The South Park guys did.
Yeah, the one where it's like America, F yeah.
So not that song, but there's another song in that, and I want you to look it up. Let's sing it. Come on, let's go. Everybody in their car. And I'm proud to be an American.
I can't believe this doesn't move you.
Forget the men who died, who gave their life for me, and I gladly stand up.
This doesn't move you?
No, it's so dumb.
Oh my gosh!
Now get on your little computer, go to YouTube,
and type in description.
Type in "Freedom Isn't Free."
Freedom isn't free. It's Team America is the song.
Team America World Police.
Okay, freedom isn't free. This is what spurs you.
It's essentially the same song. It's a parody. Turn it up. Crank that ish.
What would you do if you were asked to give up your dreams for freedom?
Jason, come on.
Keep playing.
What would you do?
Let it get
if
to the chorus.
to make the ultimate sacrifice? Would you think about all them women who gave up everything they had? Would you think about all them women, and would you start with freedom band? Freedom isn't free. It costs folks like you and me. And if we don't all chip in, we'll never play that band.
Jason, this is ridiculous. You want them to play this at the fireworks instead of Lee Greenwood?
It's the same thing.
Get out of here, Jason. That's the height of disrespect.
Lee Greenwood is just a big...
I only have respect for you, and, I played that, but no way.
Lee Greenwood of the Republic. I'd much rather listen to that song, because that's America right there. Star Spangled Banner, that's America.
That's Jason. That's unbelievable.
Lee Greenwood.
Unbelievable!
You
Lee
have to
Greenwood is...
what are you talking about?
I get that people love the song, the proud, we stand up. Dumb.
Okay, Jason, I will disagree to disagree, but when I hear that, I would love that to be part of every fireworks, rendition that's ever played, because it puts me in a great mood. I feel, proud to be an American and things like that. But you
back to fireworks? I'm not a huge fireworks guy. I just don't get it. It's you're going.
You don't even like fireworks?
I like them at times, but it's about 20 minutes of stuff exploding in the air.
Now, you're a friend of mine on the podcast Facebook page. Are you a friend of mine on my personal page where I just post a bunch of family videos and kid dancing?
I don't think so.
Okay, I'll add you because I took video of it. If you can sit there and watch that and not be moved by it and enjoy it, I like fireworks, man. It's great because I have a lot of family members that have birthdays around the time of the 4th of July. My daughter's the 5th of July, so I'm a fireworks guy.
I don't like the fireworks that everybody sets off in their driveways. Those are annoying.
It is.
We got lucky with our dog. Our dog was not afraid of fireworks, and I pray to God we get the same thing with my son.
That's good.
Because that's gonna suck ass.
How often do they do it now? In the hood that you live in.
Come July 4th. I mean, they've been setting them off since Memorial Day, but it's gonna be crazy come July 4th.
Yeah, someone set them off in my hood a week ago, like at 9 o'clock at night. We're like, dude, it's the middle of freaking June. Why you light them off? It's like,
and at 9 o'clock at night, I'm sure that it's still light out. Mm-hmm. But
I've never been to the Detroit
fireworks. We've done the St. Clair Shores fireworks a couple times. I've been down to Detroit. In Detroit, it's definitely, if you aren't in Hart Plaza, it's definitely a little bit harder to see the fireworks. The fireworks that I actually enjoy is Disney World. Whatever.
How often do they do them? How often do they do them?
In Disney World?
Every night?
They do it every night. They do, and I think all the different parks do them.
Every night, yeah. Most people say that. And I was really fascinated. My wife liked the segment with Craig Custance from last week's Rant podcast, where he said, the missus was bummed out that
can't go to Disney World anymore.
She was like, he gave that up?
I could have talked with him about Disney World for about a half hour.
That was cool. It was a good chat. You can check it out on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast or DetroitSportsPodcast.com. So we've come to the conclusion that in terms of our fireworks discussion, you're totally off base, and I will never discuss fireworks with you ever again because you messed up and you dissed Lee Greenwood. I cannot believe I sat here and listened to that.
Lee Greenwood is...
He was a staple of at least 10 Detroit fireworks shows that I saw in the past decade, and now I'm not sure I'll listen to pay attention. I like the music. I like
what
watching
else
on TV.
has he done? He's done anything.
Yeah, I don't think too much. I don't think I know.
If you said Lee Greenwood, unless somebody specifically knows that he's the singer of that song, they're not going to know who he is.
Listen, I would love to be a one-hit wonder. With a hit like that, I'd take it all
You
day.
say Star Spangled Banner, I think America.
So,
You say Battle Hymn of the Republic, I say America.
have you ever been to the Detroit fireworks? Ever gone down there, made a day of it?
I didn't, because I worked at Quicken, so I was downtown and basically just got off work and stayed down there, and until the fireworks went around, and we stood on Woodward, so we still got a pretty decent view.
Yeah, it said, I saw a newspaper article that said, the things you need to know about the fireworks and what to watch. It said you couldn't get down to the Hart Plaza anytime before 2. So you had to get there by 2 o'clock, and then it's open. Several streets were locked off and things like that. So that's a huge crowd right then and there. And then it's not the fireworks part. People are going to, go down there and have a good time. It's leaving. Can you imagine had the Tigers had a game today, or if there was anything else going on downtown? It's unbelievable to try to get out of Detroit, especially with that many people all crowded.
Especially with this being such a big event, you have a lot of people who don't really know Detroit. If you know Detroit, you can probably get in and out, and you know the back roads, and that's why I really don't have any issue. We usually tend to leave early anyways, which we would probably do if we were going down to the fireworks tonight. But it's all the people who have no idea where they're going, so they only know like one way. So it's either taking Woodward or they're going to get on 75. So it just lends to being an issue.
I've never gone.
And they don't have a very good mass transit system.
It sounds like the best way to do it is get a room at the Renaissance, hang out, watch it out the window, and then enjoy the night, get loose a little bit, and then get home the next day.
Yeah, I imagine that doesn't cost too much money.
Yeah, probably that day is probably
Especially, I would think that if you request those types of room, they charge a little bit more for that.
Yeah. Dynamic pricing, as they say. Well, you know what, Jason, hasn't been dynamic? You and I are going to talk about these draft picks that the Pistons and Red Wings have made. And the reason why I wanted to talk to you about it is because it seems like the Wings and Pistons are formulating a long-term strategy in terms of who they're bringing in. And when I was thinking about it, in terms of who the Pistons drafted in Kennard and who the Red Wings drafted, a young center that's massive, and everyone's like, what is it about these teams that's making everybody disappointed? And I looked at it and I said, I think I know. The reason why that there's a lot of angst and people uncomfortable is they're not sexy. You can't have an organization lose and then not have any sexiness around the draft. People get excited for the draft. You got media tables, you got the microphones, you got the pomp and circumstance of the media coverage, and then you got, everyone hyping it up. I watched the NBA and NHL drafts and, the coverage, the talk, and then you got everybody getting excited, about trades or potentially Andre Drummond being let go. We can reshape the franchise. So that hindered my expectations and my thinking about the draft, because then you had a player that many people were in love with, Malik Monk, that could have fell to the Pistons. Pistons drafted number 12, and number 11 came, and nobody had taken Malik Monk. And I just threw out a tweet, in essence, just, obviously knowing the answer before I sent it on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast. I said, look, do you guys want Malik Monk? Everyone's like, yes, this would be great. And of course, he's taken by Charlotte. So now the pick comes, and it's like, okay, are the Pistons going to go with Kennard or Mitchell? And everyone's debating back and forth, and the Pistons take Luke Kennard with the 12th pick. And you come out and you start realizing, okay, let's look into this player. What has he got? Obviously the first thing that people are talking about is is this Kyle Singler 2.0? Is this a guy that's going to come here and maybe just be a 35% three-point shooter? Does he add anything else? And then Stan Van comes out and is like, dude's got to improve his defense a lot. And you look at it and you go,
that's not saying that his entire team needs to improve his defense, though.
Yeah, but it leads you to believe he's not ready-made. And you say to yourself, 12th pick, people are saying he's not going to contribute, and he's likely going to slot now as a backup. He's not going to start. And you go, with the 12th pick, you could have got a guy, if it was Malik Monk or Mitchell or somebody else. We want guys to come in and to contribute right now to help this team. You got a team going into a new arena, Little Caesars Arena, and I don't think, based upon the roster that they got right now, at the time of this chat with you and I, there's nobody that I would want to pay for on that team. And I look at it and I say, you know what? The Pistons and Wings are building for the long term, and I'm just not sure, my patience right now in terms of how much money I'm going to support with these two franchises, thinking the long way. The two draft, and then did you see the reviews of the Wings draft overall? It was panned nationwide.
Let's start with one doomed franchise at the moment. Right or wrong, I think the pick of Luke Kennard, it's strictly going in fitting Stan Van Gundy's system. And I think it's still out on whether it's going to work or whether it's not going to work. Last year before the season, I think we were all on board. Everyone was on board with Stan. Stan's the man. And obviously it was derailed with the Reggie Jackson injury and just setbacks all year this past season. So Luke Kennard fits the role that this team needs. We need shooters. And Luke Kennard, that's what he does. He shoots. Obviously, he's going to have to improve his defense. I think everybody in the NBA can probably improve their defense. I don't think that they were really looking to get that guy to come in and be a savior of a franchise, because realistically, at 12 or even at 11, you're not going to get a franchise savior. I think it would have been nice if Malik Monk would have fell there, and maybe in a year or two he could be slotting, be a nice sixth man. I think Luke Kennard could just as arguably be that kind of a player. He's going to be a guy who's going to come off the bench and hopefully create some instant offense. We didn't have that on our roster this year. We don't have a guy who you bring off the bench and then he can come in and hit a couple threes. That was our biggest thing. We couldn't make baskets. We'd have prolonged periods of time where we were just super cold, where Reggie Jackson just holds the ball, and then puts a shot up with a couple seconds left, and we get nothing.
See, when I look at it, look at the Pistons' last couple drafts. They've gotten Stanley Johnson, Henry Ellenson.
Was just a mistake.
Henry Ellenson and Luke Kennard. Do you see that as being building blocks in any sense of motivation that this team is going to get to the playoffs? And it leads to the question that a lot of people are asking is okay, is this team being built to try and win a championship, to try to win the East? Or is it just being built to get to the playoffs and advance? Because I don't see a team that's going to advance super far with Stanley Johnson, Henry Ellenson, and Luke Kennard in the next 3 years, especially with now you got the East kind of reshaping with Cleveland maybe going to be on the decline soon and Boston elevating. But look what, the Minnesota Timberwolves are doing, out west. You got teams.
Even the Philadelphia 76ers.
You got teams that are now reshaping and trying to stock up post LeBron to take over that next spot. And so if I were to ask you, are the Pistons going to be that next team post LeBron? No. It's a simple answer, and it's not sexy. So I would say, if you're going to take a draft pick, maybe you could have gambled and moved up. Maybe throw in an extra first round in the next 2 drafts and say, look, get rid of Andre, take his salary, we'll contribute some, or we'll match it in some way. Find a creative way.
I don't think it's that easy, though.
It's not easy. But if you could have maybe...
I don't think there was the talent in this draft to want to really trade up. I would have understood trading up to that 11th spot and maybe taking Malik Monk. But to give up a ton of assets to move up into this, the top 10 of the draft, I don't think it was necessary. And
it's just one of those words. What word would you describe kind of your feeling regarding the future of the Detroit Pistons? How would you, kind of think about it? It just kind of seems boring. Doesn't it seem boring?
I would call it uncertain. I think this future is uncertain. Going back to Stanley Johnson was a mistake. I didn't want Stanley Johnson. I wanted Devin Booker, and that would have been fantastic for this team. Henry Ellenson, we haven't seen enough. And I put that, it's all on Stan. Stan didn't use him. He was in the D League for the majority of the year.
You know what the Pistons did? Since we've become media now, we get the press releases. They sent a press release every 3 days stating that he went up and down from Grand Rapids to the Pistons. To Grand Rapids to the Pistons.
That's what he did.
It didn't make sense at all. Play the guys. That's what everyone wants is you got a draft pick at 12. Play him. Let's let him learn on the fly so we can see what we got.
What I'd say for Kennard is if he's on this roster and at least getting minutes and getting time playing, then you're moving forward in your progression with his team. If Luke Kennard is just going to spend time with Grand Rapids on the drive and doing the same thing that Ellenson did, going back and forth between the it's not the D League anymore, it's the G League. The Gatorade League.
Now,
but if that's what it is, then we really do need to start looking for a new GM and coach.
Jason, is it fair or foul that one of the reasons why I think a lot of Detroiters don't have confidence in Kennard is the fact that he's white. Do you have, I mean, he's not Larry Bird, right? He's not Larry Bird. No one's talking about him like that. I don't feel like the Pistons' next great white hype is Luke Kennard.
I honestly, I don't think it's fair to Luke Kennard. I don't think it's fair to Henry Ellenson. We haven't seen these guys play enough. And that was one of the first things I saw on my Facebook feed. Somebody said Kyle Singler 2.0. And it's absolutely, I mean, yeah, they both went to Duke and they're both white guys. Kyle Singler was a forward. Luke Kennard's a guard. They're completely two different types of players.
And now you realize that Stan Van Gundy needs guys to shoot threes, and it may have implications as
that's what he wants. That's how he builds all of his teams. Go back to Orlando.
But look at it like this. Let's say
inside and out with Dwight Howard.
Let's say they let go of KCP and they don't decide not to drop a boatload of money on him, and maybe he ends up with the Cavaliers or somewhere else. And you realize, okay, with KCP and his shooting percentage, which got a little bit better last year, the Pistons still didn't make the postseason. So now you're going to insert a younger player, a guy with defensive liabilities. KCP's defense was much better, and he was the guy that was, in charge of stopping some of the opponent's strongest offensive weapons. Now you got a guy with less defense, and you're not going to expect him to shoot at the same efficiency as a guy like KCP at this point in his career. So it makes you go, oh my gosh, now you're going cheaper. Now it just looks like a situation where you're going to have these young guys, you're going to try to shoot threes, but I want them to be making them.
I'll tell you right now, if we don't re-sign KCP or sign somebody who can adequately replace him shooting and defensive-wise, we're going to be the bottom of the Eastern Conference
So
again.
If I were to ask you, what's the vision of the Pistons? Like, just build youth and see what happens? What's the vision? Like, wait for Andre Drummond to be the manly man and the guy to live up to his contract?
What they're doing, they're not pursuing anything else. They're really trying to get Andre Drummond to be that Dwight Howard type player, the guy who can, protect the rim and also be the down low guy, because you got Reggie Jackson, KCP, Marcus Morris, Tobias Harris. Now you get Luke Kennard. Reggie Bullock is another guy you can bring on off the bench who can shoot. And they're trying to build it so it's outside in. If you're not going into Andre Drummond, then you're kicking it out to somebody.
You know what the biggest indictment of the Pistons was? When the rumors started floating that the Pistons might trade Andre Drummond to the Sacramento Kings, everybody got excited. People were like, yes, do that. Trade it. Let it go. Let Andre go. Let's make this a new roster. People were really excited and messaging us on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast like it was a new beginning. And then when it didn't happen, we were all waiting, and then you're like, oh, we still got Andre Drummond. So the fans are not behind him. And the biggest thing I think that people are really ripping Andre Drummond for is his effort. They believe that he took the money and had a bad year because he was lazy. And that
Andre Drummond and Reggie Jackson.
Exactly. So that's a bad indictment. That's someone that you made the face of your franchise. And if that's the guy that the fans want to get rid of, how are you going to sell that in the future? But Jake Chapman told Adam and I that, look, you could expect Andre Drummond to steadily improve for the next 8 seasons. Is that the case?
Steadily improve, but how
big
much
man.
Is he going to improve, though?
Exactly. That's
I know Jake loves himself some Andre Drummond, and he will always go to the rebound well, that he gets 15, 20 rebounds. But there's only so much that Andre can do. And if he's not going to be late in games, then he's not a factor. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what the answer is, but I think I probably give it another season before I realistically look at blowing this team up.
Another season?
I give it this season because you got to hope that Reggie Jackson comes back, that he's a little bit hungrier. If he can stay healthy, that you're going to get more out of him.
See, I just see another season where maybe they make the postseason but get blown out in the first round. I don't see this team evolving. I mean, unless they make a splash in free agency. But by all accounts, you don't see too much. You don't see them in the running for Paul George. You didn't see them in the running for anybody else that's been trying to be bandied about or moved. So it just stinks. We're
in a wait and see mode.
Butler goes to Minnesota.
With Paul George and Jimmy Butler, though, they weren't really going to trade Reggie Jackson or Andre Drummond. And if you aren't going to trade those guys, it doesn't make sense to really bring those guys in.
When you see the draft strategy, it just seems like we all got to be patient. And I don't see it seems like the Pistons have been irrelevant now for the past 5 seasons. And while we continue to talk about them and watch as fans, in terms of championship hopes, it's not there. I'm not there with it. I don't think that they're anywhere closer to a championship after drafting Kennard. And it just stinks because if you look at it, that's the philosophy. Build through the draft and continue to maybe make a couple moves to supplement your roster. But look at the 3 guys who we've drafted recently: Stanley Johnson, Henry Ellenson, and Luke Kennard. Is that the next big three? That doesn't even sound like the big quarter.
I think if Stanley were to get better, he could be a piece. I think Luke Kennard could be another piece. I don't see these guys being the core. Now, we're talking about the drafts now, and we're hoping that they can somehow salvage this. What does a rebuild look for this Pistons team? Because I think that's the next step if they don't improve.
A rebuild looks like this. It goes to the fact that you say, okay, we have Reggie Jackson, we have Andre Drummond. We're going to play Stanley Johnson, Ellenson, and Kennard all next year, and we're going to win 30 games and try to get into the top 5 and get into the lottery. And that way, when an efficient player comes in, you draft a guy that's going to make impact right away, a guy that's going to come in.
And it'll be interesting to see.
Or
if we don't re-sign KCP, then that is a signal.
I'm taking a shot in the dark here, and one that is more of a hope than ever a realistic possibility. But there's a grumpy superstar player playing with the Knicks, and he's a guy that was featured. And I think that if you go out there and you get Kristaps Porzingis, you now have a franchise guy. You got a guy, and you go, oh, that's what we wanted from Andre Drummond, a guy that comes in, that plays big, that can shoot threes, that has some personality, that can play defense, and has improved in his first 2 NBA seasons.
Where does Porzingis fit in this with Drummond? Or are you assuming that Drummond's not on this team?
I'm assuming Drummond's not on this team. You figure out a way to let him go.
That's a lot of hope.
That is a lot of hope.
I'm talking about, like, realistically, what is this? I think what you're looking at is, you're stuck.
Can a man dream, Jason?
No, you're not allowed to dream. We're supposed to be real here. This isn't fantasy basketball.
Okay, so the fantasy's already out the window within 4 seconds. So realistically,
Andre Drummond, Reggie Jackson are still on your team. Okay. I think the big signal is if we don't re-sign KCP. If we don't re-sign KCP, then the rebuild should already be in the works.
Yep.
You should be trying to, at that point, then shop Marcus Morris. Tobias Harris could be a part of this. He might actually be one of the better pieces in that starting lineup. And you're giving time to all those young guys. Stanley, Ellenson, Kennard, regardless if they're good or bad, they need to play. I want to see Reggie Bullock. I want to see Darren Hilliard. I want to see what these guys can do.
Exactly.
I mean, look, who are the other guys who didn't get any time? Who's a Michael Beneget? What can he do?
You're right.
Just put him out there. It can't be much worse than what the Sixers put on the floor this year.
So now, like I said,
I actually want this now. I don't want this team to compete. I want them to go full tank mode, see what they get with their
full tank
young
mode.
guys.
And I'm wondering if the fan base is going to be positive. Are they going to still have patience? I think they're counting on the fact it's going to be a new arena, a fan base with a new love of basketball from the city of Detroit. So we'll see all that. We'll see that for a season, potentially. But if it starts off bad, maybe the first season at Little Caesars Arena is not going to go right, and the attendance might be down after maybe 20 games, after the initial love wears off. But the Pistons need a spark. That's what it is we're waiting for that spark, whatever it may be. It just doesn't seem like it's happening. There was a chance at the NBA draft to put some spark back into the fan base. It just, and especially, too, do you know what was said about Luke Kennard? I mean, how is it released in any form or capacity that he knows all the words to the movie Frozen? When I saw that, I just literally was fixated on that for the better part of 2 hours. Like, why is that being announced on ESPN as a guy? This basketball is a tough sport. You got to bump and grind, and our next hope is a guy that watches Frozen with his reality star girlfriend. And I said, come on, man, that's a guy that probably will go to the lane and get his stuff swatted because of the fact that already I think of him, perception is reality. I perceive him as being soft.
I bet that's probably some ESPN,
that was ridiculous. That should never, ever
maybe
be uttered.
Tired of Dick Vitale and his Duke love, and he just wanted to throw that in there. Even though his mom did confirm it.
Yeah, when I heard that, I was just
if I was Luke Kennard's mom at that point, I'd be like, come on, Mom!
Exactly.
Tell me something better.
Exactly. Come on now. But there's an opportunity to kind of have a slogan with it. So if I would love to see maybe a Let It Go number 23.
Hey,
sure.
When Luke Kennard gets out there and he's raining threes, he just let it go.
That's funny stuff. But in essence, I want to say this. The Pistons and Wings are right now thinking long term, but the universal panning of the Wings draft is unbelievable. And everybody's talking about it. The fact that, the Wings drafted Rasmussen, and the word that everybody's using is project. That's the word everybody's using, in that you had a guy that was a little bit more ready-made in Velarde that they should have drafted. And I'm like, come on. Everyone said when they were talking about Rasmussen is like, look, are the Wings backwards? Are they living 5 years ago? The new league is about speed and getting to the net. And Rasmussen's a big guy, and the league's not going with that, and they're going away from that. at this point in time. So
it's speed, but you also need to have power. I mean, you need to have big guys on your team. I know I've read everything, and people who are way smarter about hockey than me have said that the Wings draft isn't that great. But I look at that, and the thing that this team hasn't had for so long are big players that can actually go out there and throw their body around. We've been living with the Gustav Nyquist and the Thomas Tatars, the Pavel Datsyuks, the Henrik Zetterbergs. Not saying those guys aren't good, but the league and when you get into the playoffs, you need to be able to throw your weight around. And I'm not sure if these guys.
What was your reaction when they drafted Rasmussen? When you first started hearing
when
news
I
about
heard
him?
that he was 6'6" in a center, I was like,
damn,
sweet, that's awesome.
Yeah, a guy that's going to be a thumper. But again, the league's going away from that, because what if he's a guy that tries to throw his weight around? Is in the penalty box.
He can. Hockey's still going to be hockey. There's still going to be hitting. You can't take hitting out of hockey. Now the guy isn't somebody who's going to go out there and fight a bunch of people. And I want to see this. I want to see big guys who can compete with these players, because I think that was one of the things when we're getting in the playoffs and just leaving after the first round, that we couldn't match up physically with teams. You couldn't get past their blue line because you had to dump and chase, but you couldn't get past their players. So I see these bigger players, Michael Rasmussen, Anthony Mantha. These are guys who can use their size and muscle around some players. Sidney Crosby is a gigantic person. Evgeny Malkin is gigantic. Jonathan Toews, big guy. We need to get a little bit bigger. I don't think it's all about speed. I think it's speed and a combination of that size.
Okay, so I'm shocked though. The Wings have made several loser lists for the NHL draft. Everybody's calling the Wings draft crop the weakest in the National Hockey League. They basically, the only person that everybody's universally okay with is the goaltender they drafted. Everybody else, they said you could have got somebody else with more talent, and people were really. I'm really shocked and actually impressed that people were really on top of Kenny Holland in terms of who they took, at what their ranking was versus who was available. And the Wings in the second and third round took guys that many people had ranked way lower. And people were saying, look, you had an opportunity to draft guys that were ready-made. And the first guy people are talking about is Velarde. And they said that he's much more ready-made to come in here to be a guy that can contribute, get the puck to Athanasiou, get the puck to Larkin, and could have been a ready-made player now. So the thinking is, it seems incongruent to me in that the Wings are maybe starting the process of a rebuild and thinking long-term, but wouldn't you consider maybe drafting a guy that's ready-made now to contribute while you're waiting? Or are you saying, look, we're going to go way long-term, let it really slide, and continue to amass top 15 picks?
I don't think there's any guarantee that anybody they would have drafted in the first round would have come up in this first season, because again, you're picking ninth. You're not picking Austin Matthews. You're not picking Sidney Crosby, guys who can come up immediately and play in the big leagues. Rasmussen, Velarde, whoever, they're probably going to start their season in Grand Rapids, regardless of how good they are in training camp. And my feeling on the NHL draft is it's an entire crapshoot. It's not like the NFL or the NBA where you pretty much know how good these players are going to go, when they're going to get their start in the league. With the NHL, you could find, fourth, fifth round players who can contribute on this team. And I think that's what the Wings were trying to do with this draft. They amassed picks. They got a lot of large players. They got a lot of, forwards and defensemen. I am excited about that goalie because it seems like every single goalie we've ever had has been just a midget. And now we get this 6'5" goalie. I have been looking at Marc-Andre Fleury's and Ben Bishop's and thinking that they're not that great, but they're just gigantic. They can just stand in front of the net. If this guy has any type of talent, I think we're going to try and get that out of him. So, I can't say that this is going to be a draft that is going to be great, but what it will be is it will be a defining moment for Ken Holland. That if we can get a couple players out of this draft, then Ken Holland will be looked at as a genius, as a savior for this roster. But if we're getting nothing, if we get nothing from this group in a year, maybe 2 years, he's going to be out of a job.
I can understand the long-term vision of the Red Wings, but at the same time, it seems like, again, with the Pistons and the Red Wings, Rasmussen's not sexy. He's a guy that everyone's saying is going to start in the next 5 years. And you go, my goodness, man, you're taking guys that are projects. At the same time, you realize, okay, is there going to be one guy next year that's going to come up here and at least contribute?
How often does that happen, though?
One. All we're asking is in a draft class. The Wings have done that, the same philosophy now in the better part of the last 3 years, where it's draft a guy, let him go to the minors, and marinate. But at the same time, you go, okay, why not draft people that you can play and see what they got, and just play young people, which is exactly the opposite of what they've been doing. It seems like why fans are upset is, and I think why it also leads people to be upset with the Pistons, is these words, more of the same. It's like we don't see a change in philosophy. Like, you're not tanking. You're not really bringing up a bunch of young guys all at once to play. So it seems like you're just doing what you've been doing that got you into this mess. And I think that's probably where the biggest source of frustration is with me, is it seems like you've just been going status quo. I don't see a big, huge difference in what the Pistons and Wings are doing that would lead me to believe they're going to make a charge towards either tanking or a charge towards winning a Stanley Cup or an NBA title. It seems like you're just going with more of the same. You're going to have 3-4 seasons where you make the postseason, you miss the postseason. You make the postseason, you lose in the first round of Tampa Bay, or the Pistons get to the first round, lose to Boston, and get eliminated. And we're still wondering, is Andre Drummond ever going to contribute or play in the last 6 minutes or make 50% of his free throws? Or are the Red Wings ever going to get out of the first round? Unless you tank, unless you play a bunch of young guys and 2 or 3 of them start to shine, and maybe you make a run like Nashville coming out of the 8th seed, then we're going to get more of the same. And that's the problem. That's what I'm thinking is the issue with the Tigers, Wings, Pistons, is we're seeing more of the same. No distinct changes in philosophy. There's nothing distinct about what we're seeing. It seems like we're just going to go about our business as usual, hope that things change, and in 2 years, when we're still middle of the road organizations, we'll figure out maybe that it's time to blow everybody out. No Ken Holland, no SVG, no Al Avila, and then everything will change.
Well, I think for the Pistons, Red Wings, and even though you threw in the Tigers there, I don't think you can blame Avila. You can't blame Stan Van Gundy. You can't blame Ken Holland. You have to blame, it goes all the way to the top. It's the owners. They're the ones who, they're signing off on this. They're fine with Ken Holland just doing the same thing year in, year out. Tom Gores is fine with Stan Van Gundy, giving him free reign to go with his system, even though it's not really helping your team in the short term. There's nothing we can do. We're stuck with Ken Holland. We're stuck with Stan Van Gundy. We're stuck with Al Avila. Hopefully not for long.
Stuck
for Avila
here at the Detroit Sports Podcast. Not a great spot to be in. Not a spot I want to continue to be in. So as long as we keep seeing more of the same, we'll continue to be venting and be frustrated with the heads of these organizations going forward. And that's what's going to happen. No doubt about it. All right, let's take our first time out. We'll come back and wrap up with a quick segment about the Tigers. Not a lot of venting we want to do because the last week for them was absolutely horrible. We'll wrap it up and try to figure out what the hell is next for the Tigers and try to relive the awful week that was. 1 victory in 10 days almost. What an awful week for the Tigers.
Motor City Sports Rant, Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Lee Greenwood sucks.
Jason, I want to tell you about our host site, Podomatic.com. When Adam and I first started this project, we were looking for one spot to host all of our recorded audio, and thank goodness we found Podomatic. The way I found them was I Googled simple and easy way to post podcasts, and luckily for us, I found Podomatic. Because of the fact that they've been so awesome to work with, we've uploaded 600 to 700 weekly podcasts through Podomatic.com. If you're looking to start a brand new project and you want to reach the heights of success that the Detroit Sports Podcast Network has, we recommend one host site, one place to put all of your recorded audio, Podomatic.com.
I got loyalty, got royalty inside my DNA. Cocaine quarter piece, got war and peace inside my DNA. I got power, poison, pain, and joy inside my DNA. I got hustle, though, ambition, flow inside my DNA. I was born like this and sworn like this, immaculate conception.
Motor City Sports Rant, Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Dude, I love me some DNA from Kendrick Lamar. Jason, awesome stuff.
Good song. You won, I think, Best Rap Artist from the BET Awards last night.
So I'm thinking that you like him a lot more than Lee Greenwood?
Yes.
No doubt about it, huh?
Kendrick Lamar can actually, make something good.
No doubt about it.
Lee Greenwood, just sings country. I don't like country either. That might be part of it. But yeah, Lee Greenwood sucks. As I've said numerous times on this podcast.
My goodness, Jason, the week that was for the Tigers was absolutely horrible. And it always seems right when the Tigers are on the verge of firing and blowing out the entire management staff, Brad Ausmus, Al Avila, they go and win a game. But I do think that there is an interesting dynamic in that many people feel like, look, no matter what happens, if they lose 15 games in a row, unless there's like player revolt or there's things going on that, are unsavory regarding Brad Ausmus or things like that, they're just going to ride it out and let him play out the contract. And if they don't want him, they just won't renew him. They won't technically fire him. And I guess that leads me to believe that that's the most respectful way of doing it. But I think the reason why the attitude kind of developed for people to want him gone is that, look, maybe it's just a spark, a change for change's sake, to spark this team to maybe make a run and maybe just play for pride and play for the fact that, hey, a new voice comes in the room and sometimes you do get a little bit of a charge. But people have also said at the same time, name me a manager that just kind of came in and swept through the league and took his team right all the way to the World Series. You can only name not even a handful that have done that. So they're going to show Brad Ausmus the ultimate respect. It just stinks because I think at this point in time, we can safely say most fans are off the bandwagon. They're just like, look, we stink. We got to sell. Talk to me when the first player is sold and we'll evaluate what we're getting back.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to tell all you Tiger fans out there, you can check out at this point.
It's time.
I don't think there's... I know that they're probably going to make a run at some point because that's what I will stand by, that this team does have the capability to be up and down. And they've been on a very, very prolonged downturn at this point.
This is bad.
It is bad, Adam. And they're not that far away. They've had some horrible, they haven't gotten offense. They've had poor pitching performances. I mean, if you want to take anything away from last week, it's that they finally outright released Francisco Rodriguez, who had a great career, but he has no business being on our roster at this point.
The Nationals are taking a serious look at him, and by the time this airs, probably have signed Francisco Rodriguez because they need bullpen help. But,
the Nationals have a better team than us, and they're probably going to be competing for the World Series this year. We're at the point where we just need somebody better who can actually come in and pitch an inning.
What do you make of Mike Pelfrey going to Chicago and having really decent numbers at this point in time? A lot better than several of your top-of-the-line starters here for the Tigers. It kind of leads you to believe, what kind of coaching was he getting here in Detroit, and why is it that he left and all of a sudden looks like he's resurging a little bit? Many people are like, okay, is K-Rod going to go to the Nationals and then regain something or at least be able to be more crafty? I hope that doesn't happen because that would be par for the course. And the ultimate embarrassment is if K-Rod leaves and has success with Washington.
I mean, it's always easy to look and see that the players who leave and do good, there's a bunch of players who leave and you never hear from again. Armando Galarraga, never heard from again. Jair Jurgens, he had a good season, but then he was done. Even Doug Fister, finally, he resurfaced with the Boston Red Sox.
It was not a bad performance. Only gave up like 3 runs. It still got the loss, but it wasn't that bad, his debut with the Red Sox.
So I think I take the Pelfrey being good with the White Sox with a grain of salt. I mean, unless something really crazy happens, Francisco Rodriguez isn't going to turn it around this year.
Okay, so no worries about that. The week that was for the Tigers was unbelievable. Could you believe some of the losses that they incurred? Giving up home runs, Shane Green struggling, the inability of some of the top-of-the-line starters to do the job. It was a crazy week this week. And to lose, to Seattle, to lose several games to San Diego, a team that has basically nobody. Did you see they were trying to run balls down? And I look at their roster, I'm like, this roster's terrible. Then you look at the Tigers, then you would look to the Tiger stats and you would see 0 for 4, 1 for 5, 1 for 4, all across the lineup. And you go, wow, you only broke out one game in the last week? Seriously, one win since, 10 days ago. It's unbelievable.
Brad Ausmus can't make the players play better. And that's just the thing. I'm not sure if any manager at this point can really put that spark behind this team. If the organization was smart, they would let Brad Ausmus go, respectful or not, and see what you got, at least with the Omar Vizquel, because if you are going to seriously consider him next season, I'd rather know right now if he has what it takes to be a manager than go into the offseason, Brad Ausmus be let go, and just be like, oh, we're going to give Omar Vizquel a shot. and then you have no idea what you're getting, especially if there's any other managing positions out there that are possible. Who knows who's going to be available come the end of the season.
I've had enough.
I have had enough of this team.
That's it. That's the way it is. Many people are going to be looking for the next 10 days and wondering, okay, what are they going to do versus Kansas City and the Cleveland Indians? And you got to go forward and say, look, this is probably the last stand. They're going to play games at home. They do play a little bit better at home, and the matchups seem to favor the Tigers versus Kansas City. Justin Verlander kicks it off tonight. But I look at it and I say, look, this is a 500 team. You now realize that Al Avila's kind of hinted at what's going on. Last week he came out and said, look, we're going to start to entertain offers now. We might not wait till the trade deadline. We might have to start listening to offers, and if one comes across, it's likely that JD will be the first name crossed off the list. Once that happens, I think the floodgates open, and this team is going to be a significantly under 500 team, because once that happens, that will probably signify the end, the white flag being raised, and I think we're all just waiting for that to happen. It's not going to be, the first white flag is not going to be Brad Ausmus being fired. It's going to be a player traded, and that's what's going to happen. We're all going to wait for it, and I think it's fine. I think that many fans, in the course of their anger and their expression of that anger, have kind of gone through the rebuild. It's done. They know it. It's a rebuild time, and the first official sign will be the first player that is sent out of here. That will be the first sign, and many people will look to what the organization does, who's brought back, and say, okay, finally, we can start the process of healing and starting over with these Tigers, because watching them is very frustrating. I mean, now I've gotten several messages. I've gotten several messages in the nature of who cares? Doesn't matter. I'll throw out a poll question. Maybe a couple dozen will send back. Doesn't matter. Who cares? Why are you watching? You got people watching CFL. You got people watching pro wrestling, movies. People are waiting for some shows to debut on HBO in the summer. I've never really seen it that way on our Twitter page. People would be sarcastic. People would joke. But the level of discontent and the level of people saying, who cares? I still care, but my emotional investment in thinking that this team is going to win is probably over. And
the date that I would say to look for is August 1st.
August 1st. Oh, come on, Jason.
Day after trade deadline.
August 1st. No.
That's the day hammer will fall.
Okay.
I think you'll see Ausmus gone either before then or on that day. And on that day, you probably see Al Avila
not this series.
Wave bye-bye.
Not this series.
To the Tigers.
Not this series versus Cleveland. The one after in early July. I think you'll see just ahead of the All-Star game. You'll start to see maybe some talk happen. Maybe a little bit after the All-Star game, and it'll start to go down.
The reason I see it happening after July 31st is because who are you going to bring in to really run this, be a general manager for the team, to instigate these trade talks?
Mommy.
What was Marian Illich is going to do this? Is Al Avila's wife? Can she do something? But no, you're going to need somebody to try and deal these players if we are truly going to be in a rebuild. And you let Al Avila finish it out, just like David Nabrowski did. He helped out when he left. He got some players towards the end of his tenure. And I think before this end of the season, we're going to see general manager and the skipper fired.
Okay, that's enough Tigers talk that I want to have right now. It's a great day outside. I want to enjoy the day, and thank you so much for coming in here. I love the fact that we can podcast, set a time. Both you and I are like 40 minutes late to the recording time, but it was a fun chat. It kind of feels like our sports therapy week. No Motor City Sports Rant next week. I will announce that next week will be very light on podcasts. We don't really take too many. Obviously, there will always be a Doc and Jock on a Thursday, but that probably will be the only podcast release. Maybe a couple specials here and there, some one-on-ones, or some quick audio snippets, but I think the DOC is ready to tone it down for at least 7 days and for the week of July 1st and come back strong in the second week of July after the holiday, because I'm probably taking a week off for the practice. Just come in minimally, do Doc and Jock, and maybe enjoy life a little bit away from the podcast.
Well, Doc, you do you.
So I'll see you in 2 weeks, partner.
Go listen to Lee Greenwood to your heart's content. Well, I'll be listening to some better music. For John the Doc Macaroon, I'm Jason Jarvie, Motor City Sports Rant. Later, guys.
Okay, nice idiot. You. Bye-bye.
Toodaloo,
Good day, sir. I said good day.
All right. Take care now. Bye-bye then.
Loser.